Boa tarde, senhores congressistas. Vamos dar início a mais uma sessão, desta vez dedicada às melhores práticas de aplicação das TIC. Há exemplos de sucesso do que de melhor se faz hoje a nível mundial nas áreas que permitem o maior potencial de redução de emissões e as grandes oportunidades de negócio para o setor das TIC. Vários projetos nas áreas da energia, transporte e logística, edifícios e indústria são vistos à lupa por quem lidera essas experiências, tanto nacionais como internacionais. A vossa atenção, pois, ao moderador desta sessão, Pedro Carlos, membro da direção da APDC.
Boa tarde a todos. Obrigado por estarem aqui nesta sessão, em que o tema, como já vos foi apresentado, e me poupa um pouco o tempo de ter que fazer uma segunda introdução, é o das experiências internacionais de sucesso relacionadas com o controle das mudanças climáticas com base nas tecnologias de informação e comunicação e focadas sobre estes 4 grandes pilares: a energia, os transportes e logística, a indústria e os edifícios. Temos um painel de luxo connosco, temos um desafio de tempo, começamos um quarto de hora atrasados e o objetivo é cumprir o fim da sessão às 4 da tarde, de maneira que vou precisar aqui da ajuda de todos, mas eu gostaria de passar esta sessão para inglês, eu julgo que ninguém se importa, e dessa forma seríamos mais eficazes aqui na comunicação no painel. And switching to English, I would like to thank you all for being with us this afternoon. We have an excellent panel, and I will just briefly introduce everyone, and then I will do a small introduction as you go forward. We have the honor of having Mr. Alexander Ellis, who is the ambassador to Portugal from the United Kingdom. We have Mr. Martin Vesper from Yellowstrom in Germany. We have Bruce Stanford from BT. We have José Carlos Gonçalves from Lógica. We have Dan Weinstock from Better Place, and we have Livio Gallo from NL. I would like you all to welcome me in giving a warm welcome to Alexander Ellis, who is the current ambassador from the United Kingdom to Lisbon, who, as a matter of fact, was before that an advisor to the President of the European Commission on climate change. So he's probably one of the experts in this Congress on climate change. And he is known to be the most energy efficient ambassador to Portugal, and also a record holder for the Junqueira to Estrela bicycle tour. And I would ask you to welcome Mr. Alexander Ellis for his presentation. Thank you.
Can I do it from here?
You can do it from wherever you want.
Okay. Will this work from here, I wonder? We'll see.
I think so.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Boa tarde a todos. I am indeed Alex Ellis. If I'm the most energy efficient ambassador to Portugal, that probably means I'm the laziest, but I hope to prove you wrong. Many thanks indeed to the APDC for the invitation. Thank you very much indeed to Pedro for moderating the session, and to the other panel members who truly are experts. And thank you very much for listening to me. This is known as the death slot, straight after lunch. You're settling into some quite comfortable chairs, beginning to think perhaps about tea, perhaps one or two at the back, drifting off a little. I used to be a teacher, so I'm familiar with the challenges of teaching a double lesson on a pleasant Tuesday afternoon. However, I'll try and keep it short and keep it clear, and leave you with something to discuss. First of all, I am the British ambassador to Portugal. Now, as I say that, at this stage, you might think you've come to the wrong session, or perhaps to the wrong conference. Because I think if there's one thing which all of us in this room have in common, it's to wonder why on earth a member of the diplomatic community is addressing a group like this on this subject. However, hopefully I can try and explain it to you. Climate change is one of the main drivers of public policy in the United Kingdom. And you've heard this morning, I'm sure, about the consequences of climate change. I heard Nicola Stern talking about it here a few weeks ago. Put very simply, Portugal, which is a truly delightful country to live in, I can assure all of those of you who don't have the privilege, it has, on current forecasts, current behaviour, a 50-50 chance that its average temperature will rise by 5 degrees by the end of the century, and it will turn into this, southern Morocco. I haven't actually been to southern Morocco, and I'm sure it's a very nice place, but you've got a 50-50 chance by the end of the century of that's what Portugal is going to be. I read this morning that the president of the Maldives, in his inaugural address, said his main policy objective was to buy land for when the Maldives had to move because of the consequences of climate change, which is a kind of vivid demonstration of adaptation to climate change. The consequences of human geography for Portugal of climate change, if we keep going as we are very significant indeed. Very significant indeed. This is a pequeno jardim à beira-mar plantado. It won't be in 100 years' time if we keep on going as we are. So, we have to do something. Everyone knows that. Doing it means doing it together. It's the task of us all to fight climate change. That means public policy makers, it means industry, it means academics, researchers. It means, I think, above all, individuals, and that's what I'd like to come back to in this session. I think public policy makers can try and set frameworks, incentives, targets to create stability within which private sector can operate. I think more than anything else, it needs to set or enable the correct price for carbon to be set. Because if you do that, an awful lot of other things flow from that. My main objective as a public policy maker is not to make a completely enormous screw-up. That is always the first objective of public policy making, and it's amazing how often we fail as public policy makers. But that is absolutely essential. I also think that politicians have a very important role to play in leadership on this subject. It's very interesting so far. We've had a series of elections across the world the last few years. In most of the elections, you've either had both candidates denying climate change or both candidates wanting to take on climate change. The tricky one will come when you have one candidate who's pro-action on climate change and the other is anti, and then we'll see who wins. But for the time being, that hasn't happened. And here in Portugal, I think successive political leaders and governments, and certainly this government, have done a great deal to raise the public awareness and encourage the appetite for change towards climate change. All right. Before you go to sleep, and for those of you who are still awake, I'd like to leave you with 3 clear messages. The first is that the British government not only talks about climate change, but we act on it. The talk is quite impressive. You have the report delivered by Nicola Stern in 2005, which had a fundamental effect on the debate along the economics of climate change. We now have a climate change bill, law. We're not very big on laws in the United Kingdom. We don't pass many laws. But we did pass one on climate change, and it has a legally binding target of an emissions cut of 60% by 2050. More to the point, we're actually doing it. Emissions in the United Kingdom are now, I think, more than 10% below what they were in 1990. We are, at the moment, roughly on course to hit a cut of 23% cut of emissions by the end of 2010. Well above our, or below, as you like it, our Kyoto commitment. So we're doing it. We're doing it in new ways, new for the United Kingdom, maybe not new for Portugal. We're going to have, I think, the largest offshore wind farm project in the world, which has been announced by the government, 33 gigawatts by 2020, which I think is 4 or 5 times total generation in Portugal, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe more, actually. It's a lot more. But it's a huge project. Whether we're able to do it, we'll see. But we're very determined. We have a new minister, a new ministry responsible for energy and climate change, bringing those two things together, which used to be separate, and I think that's quite an important step. So, I think, but this is all very nice, but we can't actually do it on our own in the United Kingdom. Our emissions as a percentage of global emissions are about 2%, I think. Europe's emissions as a percentage of global emissions are, I don't know, 20%, 25%. China, I think, has now overtaken the United States as the biggest emitter in the world, or is just about there. In other words, what the United Kingdom can do, it matters, but it doesn't matter that much. You have to convince the rest of the world to do it. Now, there's a lot going on already, an enormous amount of collaboration which is going on at government level and at university level. And I think the United Kingdom is very keen and able to try to bring together researchers, universities, and businesses, and to ensure that people have the capacity to raise the finance for the activities which spin off from that. You have some good British examples on the panel today, and others across the European Union as well, and further afield. A company the size of British Telecom is using innovation not just in new technologies, but also by applying new attitudes and thinking to the same activities. We were talking a bit before, Bruce, about the sourcing of suppliers, and British Telecom itself does a lot of that, securing electricity supplies from low-carbon suppliers. We've also got here Logica, we talked many times before, the work which is being done on smart metering to enable operations, much more efficient operations, and for individual consumers to manage their own use of electricity and gas and water. Which leads to a kind of third message and a big point, I think, which is that this is an enormous, enormous challenge, really a very fundamental shift in some respects, this challenge of climate change. And sometimes it's quite easy to despair of it because of the size of the challenge. But it has to be done by everybody together, and that means both countries and individuals. And I think one of the things which we see in the fight against climate change is sometimes it's been too much top-down and not enough bottom-up, by which I mean, and I can take a little small grain of sand of responsibility for the work that was done to set the targets, the framework which the European Union has agreed. But in the end, most transformations are led by individuals as much as by governments. And one of the things which your industry, in the ICT industry, can do is to help to individuals to achieve that. Now, individuals are going to make the difference, starting quite young, as I'm trying to suggest by this slide. But the more we know ourselves about how our behavior affects our environment, the more capable we are of adapting our behavior to ensure that we preserve it. And for that you need knowledge, really. You need information and knowledge. Not just public policy knowledge, but real knowledge about your own behavior. And I don't think that needs to lead to radical lifestyle change. I don't regard the fight against climate change as a kind of moral crusade for everybody to start wearing more sweaters and running up and down the stairs and switching off the heating. I don't really buy that, to be honest, as a vision. And I don't believe in a kind of moralistic vision of climate change. I think I'm much more pragmatic about the way it works. But individuals, through individual actions, are the people who are going to make the biggest difference in the fight against climate change. And your industry, as I say, is the great enhancer of individuals' ability to take decisions. The penny has dropped in a fairly large way in politics about the power of individuals. So, of course, as in any talk, I have to have a picture of Barack Obama because that's now compulsory policy in any communication. By the way, it's very unwise for people to associate themselves too closely with Barack Obama, because if you do that, then people start to look at Barack Obama, and then they look at you, and then they think, yeah, maybe not. I'll be coming back to that in a bit. But what the Obama campaign simply has set the standard for all political campaigns of the future. I imagine every political operative in the world is now going out and saying, right, how do we do it like him? And he used your industry, your products, extremely effectively. And not, I think, to kind of, and this is a very interesting point about the Obama campaign. Here's a guy who announces his vice president choice by SMS Now, you could say that shows how much he cared about the vice president, or it could tell you how much he cares about technology. I think we'll go for the second one rather than the first. But what it tells you is that, as I say, this is going to be the model which everyone else copies. And Obama started professional life as a community organizer, much derided by Sarah Palin for that, although I think it's rather a good activity. And this is what he was doing. He was organizing communities through technology. It wasn't about atomization, breaking down people into little bits, but it was also about the organizing of a community through technology. And that's what he was doing, creating the Obama community through their use of technology. And that, I think, is a very, very exciting possibility and demonstrates the power of your industry, in my view. Now, the ICT industry, as you know, is both a contributor to climate change and hopefully a transformer of the fight against climate change. You emit about 2% of global emissions, that's about that. Same as the airline industry, I think, more or less. You've done quite well not to be as demonized as the airline industry is. I don't know how much longer you're going to manage that, but well done so far. So good luck with presenting it the other way, which we'll come to in a second. Obviously, there have been a lot of improvements in energy efficiency in your products, but at the same time, you produce new products all the time. They consume more energy, and so that's kind of negates some of the gains which you make. And there's a great deal of unproductive energy use in your sector or in your products, standby and so forth. Cooling. I was reading that 40% of power used by computers goes on cooling and non-computing functions. Well, frankly, if only not 40% of my energy went on non-computing functions, I would be very happy indeed. I think that's quite an impressive performance. You have short life cycles. You have rapid obsolescence in your products. So there is that side of it. But frankly, your industry should be the great enabler of the fight against climate change at the individual as well as the business level. You can look at that in terms of logistics, in terms of software, in terms of GPS, again, at an individual level. I was chatting to a colleague who was saying how many journeys have been shortened by satellite navigation. He then suggested, and how many arguments have been avoided. This is not my personal experience of use of the GPS. It can sometimes provoke as many frank and honest discussions between partners as the other way around. Technology is enabling, for example, the London congestion charge to work. Very basic, very crucial bit of technology to reduce emissions by 20% in the case of the City of London. Energy management systems. There's an example of a British firm called 1E, which has a night watchman system that powers off computers automatically and remotely, and a city council that used it got a return on investment in 3 months. The introduction of virtualization technologies. There's another example, came from the United Kingdom, the John Lewis Partnership of supermarkets and other stores. And piloting some of this technology was already saving, in a small pilot project, enough energy to power 45 homes for a year. Your industry can help us to change either in an evolutionary or radical way through broadband, through video conferencing, and there are some great examples there. Vodafone, I think now its system links 200 sites worldwide, saving an estimated 25,000 trips saved per month. I can't look at the chairman of APDC without mentioning Cisco, and in fact they also have some very exciting technology in video conferencing, which is really changing what people thought of as a very clunky business into something much more real. Because people know when it's real and when it isn't. And they know when they're using technology, they think, this isn't really helping me. And some of the early video conferencing, you think, well, is this really helping me? That's a big change which is happening at the moment, which is making it work a lot better. There's a lot more microgeneration and smart metering. And this, I think, the microgeneration and smart metering is a very interesting example of the change in the way that our societies work now. It changes which you know and you lead from your industry. It used to be very much the government, public authorities, big companies give and you receive. You then get to the next stage where you begin to compare prices, you begin to compare offers. But the way that society is working is very different now. It's much more I drive. I drive, you deliver. Not they deliver, I accept. It's a fascinating change in your business proposition. I love this idea. Imagine this, okay? Imagine selling this one to your clients. Our service is so bad that we would like you both to pay us and to do it yourselves. That's what's happening. I check myself in for my flight because it's so much better. I'd rather do it myself. My God, how did this happen? I'd rather do my own banking than have somebody do it for me. It's an amazing business proposition, and yet it works because people like doing things themselves. And your business enables that to happen, and it enables it to happen in this area of climate change very fundamentally. And the products which you give, I think, have to achieve that, and I think that they are. Technology matters. Technology matters because it's going to be crucial to tackling climate change. It's going to change products, change the way we live to an extent. And in the end, of course, technology depends on human beings. It all depends on how we use it as humans. I've never given a presentation with slides before. I don't know if I'll ever do it again after this. But anyway, it helps me. It helps me to communicate. But in the end, you provide products. Human beings are human beings, and they use them as they think fit. We've also all got to get involved as individuals, using technology and other means. In the case of the Foreign Office, we aim to be carbon neutral as a ministry by 2012. I don't really understand what that means, I have to be honest. I understand that much more closer to home, in our embassy and in our buildings, my house and all the rest of it, we aim for a greenhouse gas reduction of 12% this year, and we'll try and compound that over the next 3 or 4 years. And we can do it in small ways. We can do it by measuring how much energy we're using, which we're going to do in a much more effective way. We can use it through the sources of energy, and we can even use it, yes, by me going on a bicycle as well. I'm delighted that Britain and Portugal do an awful lot together in this area, and will continue to do a great deal in this area. We have a team in the embassy. Excuse the outrageous plug. I'm sorry, guys, but I have to make it at the end. The UK Trade and Investments team in the embassy in Lisbon is in the top 10 performers in the world. It won a World Performance Award this year. It is an outstanding team, and I appeal to all companies, whether British or Portuguese, who want to work Portuguese in the United Kingdom, British and Portugal, come and talk to me, see how we can help you. Use my house, make it more energy efficient as well. And finally, just the even ambassadors get to have some role in the new technology revolution. Please also read my blog. That's the website. It's on Espresso. Come and read it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Alexander, for the great and inspiring note. Let me pass on to Martin Vesper. Martin is an executive director for Yellowstrom. He's an alternative operator in the energy market. And some of you who know me, I have a special case for alternative operators. He has about 1.4 million clients in Germany, and Yellowstrom is very much focused on innovation. And as everyone knows, if you ask to a little kid, it will tell you that energy is yellow. So go ahead, Martin.
Thank you very much. What I would like to talk about now is energy. Can we see the screen here? That energy actually joins the internet. We heard just a minute ago about the technology advancement we have, and what we did now, and I would like to tell you in an example how we develop products, is just using existing technology. There's nothing new to it. I don't know if I can get this slide, otherwise you have all to come around here and look on this screen. Here we go. What I would like to do is two pieces. Talk a little bit about what we are. As we heard before, we are an independent retailer. Independent means grid independent. We are in Germany. We are also started in Sweden. And there's one special issue about Germany. Smart metering is deregulated business. Means we as a retailer or other companies, as they don't have to be a retailer, can offer customers a smart solution, smart metering or other types of metering as well in electricity as in gas, and that's what we do. One important message about sustainability in residential homes: you need the customer for that. He has to become involved, and actually once he gets involved, it will be a very accelerating development because they get engaged, and that's what we figured out. 50% of those who have the product said we changed our behavior, and not only the person working on the computer, but also the family changed behavior concerning energy. And they spend about 2 to 3 hours on a PC looking at what their energy is doing in their home. So there is an interest in there. They use the technology, and through that, they actually can improve the energy consumption there, through that the climate. Why is it working? The technology is available. I said we didn't invent anything new. We just put things differently together. Technology is there. ADSL, in-house power line is there, chip-based meter, affordable displays. Everything available through the technology from your companies. Customer is ready. Internet is part of the life. There's no training necessary anymore. They're frustrated with prices because they went up. They have demand for control. They want to control things. And sustainability is really a topic. We added to that we have a brand which is focused on customers, which help customers to save money. That's how we entered the market and all other things, and also put a design. And since we are a retailer and try to sell things, I brought them along. Okay. I lost the mic. Okay. That's actually what we sell. Can be replaced by the choice of the customer. He has the choice actually to say, I want to have this thing. And through that, it's connected to his internet connection, so we don't have to put a lot of other things in there. You can see it's in-house power line, and then the router and the internet, all the things you provide through your industry. That's what we use because we believe that broadband will be available to everybody in the near future, and has to be there for everybody in the near future in order to take care of climate change. And then another topic is coming in. We designed this nicely for a couple of reasons, but you also have to make the topic exciting. So we developed software, and I would like to show you a little bit of the software, that it's really, really nice to work with. And you have all different type of information there. You want to see your bill. I mean, the bill is nothing nice, but you can even have it looking nicer, as you can hear, and can look one envelope after the other through your month. Last year, January to March, you can do that and compare it to this year, January to March. Just a second here. So very easily done, just by dragging and dropping in order to improve the results the customer can see. Let's switch here again. Another thing you can see, temperature might be an additional information you want to show. That's a heat pump connection to temperature, because a lot of analysis customer wants to do has to be related to something like outside temperature, because if it's a cold winter, you need more energy. Again, we just use standard technology which is available through the internet to show the customer how he could change behavior. And that goes even very far down to the second, because you need real-time information as well in order to try certain things. Switch on a light in a home and see how much consumption it takes more. Switch off standby. And then we have a small calculator you can see on the right side, which explains you, if you switch off standby, this specific, your TV, your receiver, how much that will save over a whole year. So you combine interesting interfaces with some calculations, so people are motivated actually to change their behavior, to do certain things about it. And besides second base, this is now from my house. You can see also quarterly hour measured. You want to see what happened at night while I'm asleep. I mean, you don't want to sit on the computer all the time, but I can look now and see what happened last night. Is really everything off which shouldn't be on there? We are an energy retailer. We are an electricity retailer. Our saying is, electricity is good as long as you use it. And we just want to show the customer where he uses energy or where he receives energy, but is not really using it. There's one thing, you have to measure consumption for that and not supply. What we see in some European countries is that you have a single meter for both heating system and light, for example, in Sweden. That doesn't really help if you put a smart meter in there and still measure the delivery. You have to split it up into heating and systems and electricity, because there are two different messages which will be coming through the smart meter in order to improve. One is my day-to-day behavior, like switching on lights and switching off standby, and the other is about my heating system. Is it really efficient? Should I do something with insulation and all those type of things? That has to be split. So the regulatory environment has to put into mind, we're not talking about smart meter regarding delivery only, but we are also talking about the consumption. Therefore, we might have to use more than one smart meter in a regular home. And the last point is, we believe in competition. Sure, we're an independent retailer. We started in '99, so we believe in competition. But I think you will get the best, user-friendly, inexpensive, innovative solution. Why? Otherwise, nobody will buy it. And we will always have the pressure in competition to further explore how we can improve our products, because we want to sell them next day, we want to sell them next year, and we want to make sure that our products don't get thrown out by somebody coming into the market and having a better product. Therefore, for example, those meters can be updated. They are connected to the internet, they can be updated. That's how they work. So, and the only reason right now, in a lot of countries in Europe, you cannot have this product, as I would like to deliver the product here in Portugal, is it's not deregulated. So far, we have the free internet world where a lot of things are possible, but on the other hand, in the energy world, we are a lot of focused on national requirements, on national regulations, which then makes it very hard, because a lot of the IT industry is based on being international, on having long tails, starting with those people who would really like to have the product in the beginning, having a learning curve through that. And that's so far on the energy sector concerning residential homes is limited due to the fact that it's a national regulation, and therefore products like these cannot be spread around Europe if the customer chooses to, even if he chooses to, because regulation doesn't allow it. I think that was a quick overview about the product we developed for the German market. We sell to our customers now in Germany, and what it actually does, and it gives the customers power, it gives it control, and it's open, it's an internet product, so a lot of functionality will be coming in. And guess what? The first customers develop their own software, because it's XML standard. You can talk to this meter and have new functionality coming up. And that's what I believe, that the internet community will be able to bring a lot of solutions we might not be even thinking of as a company for the future, to reduce consumption, reduce the load in the grids, and therefore change the climate or help to save the climate. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. Let me introduce Bruce Stanford from BT. Bruce is the executive sponsor for environment and climate change globally for BT. He has a wide experience in operations, and he is now responsible for developing BT's strategy on climate change and to make sure that these plans are embedded throughout the organization, their processes, and all the activities. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm here today, delighted to be here today, to describe to you some of the journey that BT has been on in the world of climate change and some of the things that we've been doing. Let me tell you a little bit about BT itself. We're an ICT company, a global ICT company, operating in 170 countries, including Portugal. In Portugal, we serve Portuguese customers and help them with their global needs, and increasingly our global customers with their Portuguese needs. BT has focused on climate reduction since the early 1990s, with a publicly declared target of 80% reduction of UK emissions by 2016. And we're proud to have been recognised for that work with the Queen's Award for Enterprise for our work on sustainability. And we've won the Dow Jones Sustainability Index for our sector 8 years running. So, why does BT need to act in the world of climate change? Well, as you can see on the slide here, the climate change is actually impacting us. It actually is a concern for us about the security of our supply of electricity. The costs are rising. BT uses 0.7% of the UK's electricity, a huge amount of power. Our customers are making demands of us. They're demanding that we are green as a company and that we provide solutions for them to help them go green. And the stakeholders of government and of the general public are making huge demands on us as a company to act in the climate change world. So we have developed a climate change strategy, a very clear one, which is used throughout the world. We will reduce our own footprint. We will influence both our customers and our suppliers. That is a public commitment. We will engage all of our employees, and we execute a plan across the company so that everybody knows and is engaged in the activity of climate change. And as I say, our target is to get 80% of UK emissions down. Since 1996, we've achieved 58%. To give you a dimensioning of that, when we started, we had 1.6 million tonnes of CO2 in the UK. It's now reduced to 0.7 million, and if you can get your arithmetic right, we now need to halve it again by 2016. And that is our commitment in the UK. And we do that through energy efficiency, and as Alex mentioned earlier, the fact that we have green contracts for our UK electricity covering over 98% of our UK needs. But a UK target is not good enough for a global company. And our global business growth cannot cope with a static-based target. So in 1996, our non-UK energy was minuscule. Now it is growing very, very fast. So we needed to take action. First thing we did is look at what the demands are on a worldwide basis. If you look at the prevalent views out in the marketplace, it will suggest that we need to reduce the carbon intensity, that is the carbon per GDP, by 9.6% per annum. So we have looked at that target and thought to ourselves, well, what do we need to do as a company if the prevailing view is that we have to reduce that carbon intensity by 9.6% year on, year out? So we calculated our carbon intensity on a global basis, all of BAT's activities in 170 countries. The result was we announced a climate stabilization intensity target that we would reduce our carbon per pound of value add by 80% by 2020. And that figure of 80% is becoming very commonplace in terms of the speak on climate change, and certainly fits with the UK government's targets associated with 80%. This target applies to all of BT's activities on a worldwide basis, and therefore is beginning to influence activity wherever it may be. The climate stabilization target enables us to grow as a business inorganically by taking on the footprint of those new businesses and linking it in to the way we are going forward for green growth for a low-carbon future. So how are we doing that? Our energy efficiency is operating at a strong level across networks, buildings, and vehicles. BT has over 50,000 vehicles in the UK. We're building on-site renewables so that we will have wind turbines to generate 25% of the energy we need in the UK by 2016. And we're purchasing green energy around the world. And lastly, we're embedding sustainability into all of our business processes. So what we do is we think of sustainability first and not sustainability as an afterthought. So boil BT down, and what do you have? You have a data center. That's what we are as a business. In our data centers, we're raising the ambient temperatures, widening the humidity thresholds. We're turning things off we don't need. That's a very, very lucrative way of saving money, I can assure you. But through effective network resilience, we're reducing the inactive power infrastructure. Inside data centers, you tend to have a power usage effectiveness of about 2.5 amps. If you don't know what that means, what it means is for 1 amp that gives you value, you spend 1.5 amps heating, cooling, and lighting the place. So you don't get a lot of value out of that other 1.5. So let's make that 2.5 down to a number less than 1.3. That is our ambition. But you won't do these things in the center with commands. You have to engage the whole of your workforce. We operate carbon clubs around the world. We have over 100 clubs of 6 to 10 people who manage local initiatives. And a number of those local initiatives become global initiatives associated with the green space. We also encourage other companies to make offers of green products into our customers. And closer into the ICT world, BT is working strongly with the ITU in terms of what are the standards for the equipment that we have for future generations. We all know about broadband and how wonderful it is because it's always on. The only trouble is it's always warm. So how can we make it go to sleep when it's not needed and stop using energy when actually it's not required? BT is actually the chair of the focus group on ICT and climate change in the ITU. But what we've heard a lot about in the last, in the morning sessions and early afternoon is the opportunity for ICT with our customers. This is not just a challenge for BT and for ICT companies. This is a huge opportunity for our customers. Our customers need to address the sustainability issue themselves, and we have the products and the services which can help them do that. We offer a consultancy service so that we will go and footprint a customer's ICT for them and help them analyze how they can save money, that's good, but also save carbon and pursue their own carbon journey. And a range of offers that anyone who is in the ICT world will be familiar with as products and services we can take to market. And the Smart 2020 report has been an ideal icon for us to say, look, we know there is a price to pay for ICT of 2% of global emissions, but there's a 15% opportunity out there. And I would say that's a 15% business opportunity for anybody fortunate enough to be in the ICT business. BT's social responsibility is made visible throughout the company. And we also sponsor outside the company a way in which we believe we can put sustainability to help our customers, be they consumers or businesses. It's not a nice to have, this is an essential social and economic growth for us all. BT in Portugal and BT around the world would like to work with all of you to make a better world for us and for our customers. Thank you for listening. Obrigado.
Thank you, Bruce. Let me now introduce Dan Weinstock. Dan is the charging grid manager at a company called Better Place. Better Place is a quite innovative and recent company that is working on achieving an electric car using existing technology to get sustainable transportation, global energy independence, and ultimately freedom from oil. Dan.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and for the opportunity to be in Portugal for the first time. Can I see the first slide? Okay. What Better Place is trying to do is actually to scale up and replicate a model that will try to eliminate the dependence of most of the country on oil. And I think this has many reasons, and some of them are written there, starting from climate change and energy security and so on. What Better Place is. Better Place is not a car producer, although we are in connection with some of them. We are not battery producer. We are not energy producer. What Better Place is actually a mobile operator, and we are trying to connect the electric vehicle with the electricity. We involve a lot of things. On the right-hand side, you can see the electric vehicle. I will say several things about the vehicle we are using now. We are using a lithium-ion battery. We are developing a software called Auto operating system that will be inside the car. Of course, we will have interface with the customer, the car driver. We have to give the driver the opportunity to charge the electric vehicle, so we do it with charge spots and, if necessary, with battery exchange station. And we want to use as much renewable energy as possible. In the slide you can see wind turbine, but of course it can be photovoltaic panels or solar thermal source. It's not important. It depends on the country. We didn't put here the renewable energy only for flattering purpose, although it's also important. I think that there is a very important connection between the renewable energy and the battery. Renewable energy has a lot of advantage, but there is also one disadvantage, and renewable sources are actually non-dispatchable. I mean, if you take a coal-fired power plant, you put in the coal, you have the electricity. That's not the case with renewable energy. It's not up to us, it's up to God or up to nature. So if you do have the renewable energy, you maybe do not have the load. And if you do have the load, maybe you do not have the renewable energy. So we need some kind of a load, and I will say something about it later, that will compensate this fact. Right now, we are doing our experiment on this car. It's very similar to the Renault Megane that many of you know. It's a normal family 5-passenger, 4-door sedan car. It has a very similar performance to the normal internal combustion engine Megane, going from 0 to 100 kilometers with 13 seconds. The top speed is about 150 kilometers per hour. The electric engine has a power of 70 kilowatt, which is about 100 horsepower. And it will take to change the battery 5 minutes or even less. The range of the existing battery is not more than 160 kilometers, which is okay because most of the drivers do not drive on one day more than that. So we would like to put almost in every legal parking place kind of a charging spot, and someone is coming to his work, to his house, to his shopping mall, he will find this charge spot and he can charge himself. But from time to time we do drive more than 160 kilometers, and nobody is willing to wait several hours to charge himself, and in this case we will need the battery exchange, where we will exchange the battery in a few minutes, and we are already working on a prototype of that. All this operation will be handled by an SCC, Service and Control Center, and this SCC will have to take care of many things. Some of them are written here: the energy management, the grid management. That's what I'm doing in Better Place. We will have back office that will take care in problem. If there is a problem in a charge spot, we don't want to find out or to hear about it from a driver who went there and found that he has no electricity. We want to know it in advance, and we will give many services to the subscriber through this service control center. As I told you before, we are developing a software called Autos. It will sit in the car. It will have a connection with the service control center. We have some problem when we are presenting this slide to government officials. They say, oh, it's the big brother. They are a little bit afraid. But this Auto and the service control center, everything will be connected to everything, to the grid, in the parking lot, to the battery exchange station. And if we see that he almost has no electricity, we can tell him, look, you have a problem, here is the nearest charge spot, here is the nearest battery exchange station, and advise him to go there. We are cooperating with many entities. We have an investor. I'm not sure that Morgan Stanley nowadays is good to, I don't know, they're also investing in us. We have activities in Israel and Denmark, and recently also in Australia, and we will have more countries in the future. We are cooperating with Renault Nissan, with energy companies, for example, Dawn Energy from Denmark, and with battery makers, American battery makers such as A123 and AESC. Better Place is a very young company. It was established only 1 year ago. The Israeli branch started on January, and we started to activate in Denmark in March. And recently, maybe some of you heard also in Australia, and we are negotiating with many other surprising countries. We will announce it in the future. The engineering and the development is done in Israel, and the marketing, the vision, this presentation is done in Palo Alto, which brings me to the only slide which was not dictated by Palo Alto. This is mine. And now I want to speak a little bit in the time I have, engineering, and to explain why electric vehicle and battery is such a big opportunity. And I think there are two unique things about electric vehicle as an electric load. The first thing is the fact that electricity is not used when it is consumed. I mean, if right now I will turn on the light, it will, I turned it now and we cannot use it. But the car driver do not really care if you turn off the battery during the charging and then you turn it on again. He's sitting in his office, he doesn't really care. So when you consume the electricity for the charging, you can switch it on and off. And this brings us back to the connection to the renewable energy. For example, in the night in Denmark, sometimes they have very good winds, but nobody to consume it. Battery are there and they can accept it. Or the other way around. You have a problem, the utility, for example, in Israel, there is a very low reserve, and sometimes the utility is going to big consumer and ask them, please, can you cut off your consumption? But of course, it's very hard to big consumer to do. For Better Place, it won't be a big problem. Okay, we stop charge for 10 minutes, for half an hour. It's not a big deal. So this, I think, is very important feature of the battery. The other thing are the fact, because of all the big brother system I described before, the loads are monitored. And if you speak, there are many experiments, but at the end there are not very much end user in the low voltage level which are monitored. High voltage level, yes. Medium voltage, yes. But low voltage, actually you have experiments here and there, but almost all the customers in low voltage are not monitored, and actually the utility do not know what's happening there. But our loads will be, each and every one of them will be monitored, and this I think is also a very important advantage for the utility. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to contact me and I will do my best to answer you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dan. So now let me introduce José Carlos Gonçalves. José Carlos is the CEO of Logica for Portugal and Spain. He is actually quite at the center of the topic because Logica, being an ICT company, is actually one of the key players for the energy industry. So I think José Carlos will share with us a lot about that joint industries.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for the invitation. I'm going to talk on ICT, but on a specific topic, on wind. And we are talking about renewables. We are talking about how the renewables is going to change our world. and it's going to change. And the initial part of my presentation is a quick snapshot of some of the questions. Excuse me. Doesn't work. Okay. So let me essentially show you, and probably this morning this was also focused. The renewables growth that is forecasted in the near future, it's essentially in two areas, wind and biomass. And these two areas are truly the challenges that we have ahead. These are, as you see, the hydro part is still there and it's going to continue, but truly the challenge is in wind. And wind, it's interesting because when you have this kind of challenge, immediately you have also the kind of technology that immediately starts to appear. I have a problem with this. Okay. So, and again, just showing to you the evolution in terms of the technology behind wind. And you started to see in 1999 small windmills spread in some parts of the country, namely in Spain. If you travel to Spain at that time, you have seen these things. But you see nowadays how it's evolving the technology and the capacity to generate power from those windmills. And that's putting to the industry and to the industry of generation, but also to the industry of IT and telecommunications, challenges ahead. And let me talk about now not the specifics, of the technology behind, but what is required when company. And I'm going to talk about the client, because for us it's more important to talk about the clients and ourselves. When we talk about the client that wants to operate on renewables in a global way, how they can operate with the difficulties of the geographical dispersion, the difficulties of communications that lie ahead of us, and the difficulties of different technology and windmills manufacturers and different protocols and so on. It's truly a challenge. And that challenge has been tackled. And and that challenge is being tackled through the kind of things that it's required on these days. We need to talk about how to work the offshore part of it. And nowadays we are talking about offshore in the sea, which puts additional challenges, how to do the communications, how to install it. Are we going to use old oil platforms to do that, like some Nordic countries are evaluating? Are we putting near the shore, far away from the shore, how the transportation issues of the boats that are being dealt by EU are going to tackle with these things? So there are plenty of new things that are going to be new challenges in terms of innovation and solutions that means to be developed. But we need also to understand how much are we generating. At the end, a generating utility wants to know how much is generating each moment, each place, each windmill. And that's also a challenge how to tackle and how to address. Wind, as my colleague some minutes ago said, wind is not deterministic. Wind appears when God wants. We can probably minimize the risk of not having wind, but we need also to have tools to forecast and tools to address the issues about how can I generate on a stable way for a business. And then, as usual, you need to see the grid, how this thing behaves with the grid, with the national grids. And let's see some of the things that have been, some of the things that are required on these things. When you have a global operation, you need a global dispatching. You need a global management of all the things that you are operating in that business. And that's what we have been developing together with EDP Renewables, which is our client on this. EDP Renewables has a challenge that they put to themselves. They want to generate in renewables energy as much as currently Portugal is generating for their own consumption per year. Now, we are talking about a country with the size that we have. We cannot put so many windmills because otherwise it becomes very difficult and very terrible to manage. So it only can be done if we spot the other places where we can put windmills and generate energy. So it can only be operated in a global way. And let's keep in mind that we are talking about a company that once is one of the top 3 renewables energy companies in the world. And we as Portuguese normally have this tendency to be a little bit pessimistic. But let's face it, we have one of the top 3 companies generating renewable energies in the world. And to do that, it needs technology like the one we are showing here. Technology able to reduce the operational costs, to have interfaces with the grid, to be able to the grid, because the national grids are always responsible for the behavior of the grid, and sometimes they needed to enter there and stop generation. So you need to be able to manage the assets, and we are talking about assets of huge amounts of investments, and you need to be able to manage it. But also you need to have information on a 24/7. You need to understand if something went down, how to fix it. And as you can see, and probably the people that are in this room that coming more from the telcos area, you'll see that we are managing these kind of things as a network, because in reality, it is a network. It's done through communications by satellite. We need to be able to address, in some places, the satellite issues. And it's through the combination of these things that we are able to manage this. I have a problem with this. And also, we need also to understand how to do the performance management. And there are plenty of things, but probably the most important one here is that each one of these contracts, they have agreements with the national authorities, and simultaneously they have agreements between the owner of the parks and the builders, the manufacturers of the windmills, which means they have SLAs. And this is also another thing that needs to be done on a country-by-country basis. And again, systems like we developed are exactly focused on this kind of stuff. Just quickly, this is the current situation. We are managing today several dozens of wind farms in 2 centers in real time. We are using and managing 7 different manufacturers of wind turbines. And that we are putting all of these in real time, managing it in real time. And all the operators of EDP can shut down, can start doing anything on those windmills from a remote distance without being directly there. One important thing that we use to do this, it can be done if we have innovation around. Most of the things we have developed in the last 2 years were non-existent anywhere in the world. And it only can be done if we have a policy of innovation, and as Alexander said in the beginning, about knowledge and people. The combination of a client with an ambition, people with knowledge, universities that were able to work with us, created a success in terms of the management and in terms of the growth of this company. We are proud to be there, and we created, and it's been showed in our innovation center in Lisbon. It's showed to all our clients, and I will most welcome anybody of you that would like to see our solutions there running, including this one that I'm talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, José Carlos. And now, I know you have been waiting for Livio to make his presentation, and you should now start to prepare your own questions. These gentlemen now have done their work, and I'm expecting very good questions from you, so you have 10 minutes to prepare. So Livio is the COO of Enel. Enel is the second largest electricity player in Europe, and he has this amazing number of smart meters, 30 million in Italy. So go ahead, Livio.
31 million. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, thanks you to the President of the APDC, to the President of the Congress for this invitation, for having this opportunity of presenting our experience in this important venue. Let's start with a brief presentation of our Enel group, of our group. We are Italy's largest utility, second largest utility in Europe by installed capacity and by results. And we have a distributed presence, a well-balanced and international well-diversified presence worldwide, and we are working in 22 countries. Our shares are floated on the market for 68%. After the acquisition of Endesa, we control 67% of Endesa. And after the acquisition of EOGK 5 in the Russian Federation, we are the first integrated utility in Russia dealing with the upstream gas and with the generation and sales to the customer. We are now the second largest operation by installed capacity and by EBITDA in Europe, counting on 13.1 million EBITDA in the year 2007. We have 82,000 megawatt of installed capacity, 52 million customers, 86,000 employees, 50% of them in Italy and 50% of them outside Italy. Now let's focus a little bit more about the infrastructure which we run in Italy, the electricity networks and the gas networks, where we implement the application which are based on ICT innovation and which will achieve, we think, a progress toward a low-carbon strategic development. We run in Italy an electricity network of 1,100,000 kilometers, and we have 31 million customers. We distribute 85% of the energy in Italy, and we run a business area for the gas networks with 2 million customers, which represent more or less 15% of the Italian market. We also manage the public lighting of 50% of the local Italian municipalities. Now, let's have an overview, if we have a next slide to come. Okay. On the ICT and energy chain. The energy chain is based on generation, transmission, distribution, and sales of energy to the customers. What are the most important contribution which ICT can provide in this energy value chain? In the generation area, optimization packages, simulation models, automation system can provide a more and more efficient generation of the power plants, and telecommunication system will link the power plants to the remote control areas which are connected to the energy management system, which offer the energy produced to the energy pool. The generation and the load profile of the power plants will be more and more highly dependent on the prices of the energy pool. The ICT applications have to provide a seamless and friendly integration of renewable and distributed resources into the network structures. As we heard during the whole day, the amount of renewable distributed resources will increase a lot in the next coming years. We are talking about wind, photovoltaic, solar thermal, fuel cell, storage system, geothermal. In the transmission area, an efficient management on the transmission capacity using wide area measurements will reduce the network losses. In the distribution area, network automation increasing the reliability of the networks, the workforce management, dematerialization and virtualization, as we heard this morning, and simulation tool will provide an improvement on design and planning of the distribution networks. On the customer side, the automatic meter management system and the demand side manager are the most important issues which we can deal with through improving our performance toward a low carbon economy. Now, as you heard during the presentation, starting in 2001 and ending up in 2005, we installed 31 million meters. These meters installed in the house of our customers are remote controlled and measured by our control room located in Rome. Using the smart meter, you can activate the contract, you can terminate the contract, you can increase the power if the customer requests it, you can decrease the power in case of net debt, and you can also download into the meter tailored tariff to stimulate the customer to shift the consumption from the peak hours to the off-peak hours where the energy costs less and reducing the CO2 emissions. In 2007, we achieved 185 million of remote readings and 9 million transaction remote operation without sending our field force in the houses of our customers. Now we are installing since 6 months bi-directional smart meters because our customers are becoming prosumers, that means producer and consumers, installing photovoltaic on the roof of their houses. Remote control of the network is also an essential application related to the IT work. With workforce management, we provided 5,000 palm-top to our field force, and using this, our operator can be driven by the geolocalization installed into the palm-top, either to the network in case of a fault or to the customer house in case of a request of our customer. We really implemented a mobile office next to our customers, and this equipment are always on, connected to the central system, implementing a real dematerialization. Home devices display, we are designing to install a display in the house of our customer for showing their consumption profile. And beside the technological relevant aspects about the electronic meter and the home devices, we do think that these equipment are a real tools for developing the self-consciousness of our customer on their consumption profile, in order to have them actively participate into the energy market, because we need them. As we heard also during the presentation of our colleagues, we need the individuals to understand it. We need the customers to actively participate to the energy market. Next slide, please. We talked about this tariff option. We launched 2 years ago some tailored tariffs like Sera. Sera means evening in Italy, and we offered a 16% discount for consumption after 7 o'clock in the afternoon, or a tariff like weekend with a 22% discount during the weekend, or 8/7 with a discount on a particular consumption profile. 3 million of customers made their choice, and I think this application a success, and we are able in this way to stimulate them to shift the consumption during the off-peak hours. Other important benefits are the possibility to have a synchronous rhythm between the meters and the transformers, and to be able to measure in real time the technical losses, and of course to try to reduce them. You are also in a position using this system to measure the commercial losses and therefore to localize energy fraud and theft. Now, we talk about the application which we implemented based on the ICT work of our colleagues and of our suppliers. Now let's talk about the future. We are now designing and going to implement the networks of the future, the so-called smart grids. The basic concept of smart grids is very simple. Now we have central power plants with 1,000 megawatt, 1,500 megawatts, supplying the energy into the high voltage network, transform into the middle voltage network, transport and transferred into a low voltage network and supply to the customer. In the future, we will have more and more distributed resources, renewables, photovoltaic, aeolic, solar thermal, gas microturbines, and the energy will be injected at every voltage level. As we know, renewables are not dispatchable, they are predictable, and they have to have very accurate forecast system in order to predict the generation of the renewables, the forecast of the customer, and to make a local energy balance within the network at every voltage level. We have to integrate in a seamless way new application. Electric cars will come, we heard before, and using plug-and-play technologies, power electronics, smart equipments, distributed intelligence, we have to be able to send to our customers real-time price and energy volume signals in order to allow them, to stimulate them to actively participate to the energy market. So one-directional flow in the existing network, in the networks of the future, a multi-directional flows, a lot of prosumers, a lot of renewables, and we are going towards a world where we have to integrate in a secure way into the network, combining central generation and distributed generation and prosumers. The emphasis will be, of course, on the energy value, but will be more and more on the information value. We do think that the ICT innovation is the major change enabler to make the smart grids a reality towards a low-carbon, sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Livio. Well, I have to thank everyone because we have clearly met our 1.5 hour. We actually started 15 minutes late, so I guess we still have some time for the questions that we have in the audience. Shall I ask for questions in Portuguese, or there are some mics around? First question. Everyone's shy, so I have my question. I should have my question. So my question is to Alexander. You mentioned the need for top-down and bottom-up approach. And being a very practical guy, I think that one of the reasons why bottom-up works is prices go up. With oil going up, there was certainly a bottom-up incentive to be more energy efficient. With the current lowering of energy prices, at least in the short term, but also the global credit crisis, do you think there is an impact on the investment that has to be done to allow this bottom-up take-up of energy-efficient behaviors?
I'm really delighted that it should be a public servant who makes observations about private sector investment. I hope we're not going back to those times. I certainly can't make those judgments, but I look to the gentleman on my right and my left who will tell me about that. I think that what's going on in it is an economic crisis, not just a financial crisis. The United Kingdom is now in recession. I guess Portugal is going to be in recession pretty soon, I would guess, and most of the big economies of the world. That means lower investment, for sure. As far as I understand, all you guys, you depend on confidence. And if people don't trust the price which you give for something, then capitalism doesn't work. So maybe the prices were wrong, but anyway, it's a good reminder that you need confidence in markets. But I fear it will mean less investment. My bigger fear, actually, is not around that. It's around protectionism. I fear that climate change will be used as a pretext for protectionism and a reduction in competition across the world. That people will argue, and they do argue, that the best way to deal with climate change is to put taxes on imports from, or increase tariffs on imports that come from countries which are high emitters or growing emitters. I think there are plenty of people in the American Congress who would like to do that in relation to China. And that's the wrong way around. If you're ever going to convince the Chinese about action on climate change, it's not going to be through protectionism. It's going to be the other way around. It's going to be the global bargain which says our markets are open, they should remain open, there are great benefits to our economies from being open, and we need your help in dealing with a global challenge. The Chinese are very driven by self-interest, like all of us, and they see that they need to do action in their own country. But my fear is that you will see increased protectionism. It's also going to be a test, I think, of did you really mean it, basically? Did you really mean it? Was it nice but not necessary, as it were, the action on climate change? And luckily, reality will bite very hard on those who thought it was nice but not necessary because of the changes which will lead to dramatic changes in human geography in the next 50 years from climate change. I mentioned the Maldives. It's going to happen elsewhere as well. So I fear a short-term reaction. There is an inevitable reaction of contraction in investment as a result of what's going on economically. I fear protectionism, and I do fear a kind of, well, that was nice but not necessary attitude. But pretty soon, climate change isn't going to stop. It's there. It's been happening for a while. It'll just keep going. And sooner or later, the public response to that will be very strong, and that will drive public policymakers into correcting any mistakes which they're making now.
I don't know if any of you gentlemen want to comment on the current. So, eu dei-vos tempo para fazerem uma questão, portanto, pelo menos uma questão tem que vir da audiência, porque senão acaba já a sessão. Não acredito. Nenhuma? Eu sabia que havia alguém com coragem.
Thank you very much. Luis Cunha from ADP. My question is to Better Place. I'm wondering, how do you see the model for electrical vehicle penetration without affecting the climate issue? I mean, when we introduce a lot of electrical vehicles in our normal habits, we are replacing fuel with electricity, and at the same time we don't want to lose commodity. So we will want to charge our vehicles during the peak hours or during the night. How do you see that, and how do you see the model to put this into operation without affecting the global climate change issue?
Of course, because of a cost issue, we would like that the consumption of energy for charging the vehicle will be in the off-peak hours. Now, we would like to consume as much renewable energy as possible, but this is not up to Better Place or any other EV producer. We are not the energy producer, but what I was trying to explain in my presentation, that maybe the EV industry will be kind of a catalyst for renewable energy. This is one answer. The other answer is that once you are shifting from the conventional fuel to the electricity, then all the development in the electricity, even on the renewable energy, can decrease the pollution. Maybe not zero emission, but will decrease it. For example, coal-fired power plants are still built and will be built in the future, but they are more and more efficient as the progress. In the future, we will have the IGCC. I think that the level of the pollution of coal-fired power plant, if it's in IGCC technology, is not far from natural gas fired power plant. So I think that the shifting from ICE vehicle to EV will decrease the pollution, maybe not to zero, surely not at the beginning, but it will contribute to it. But this is not up to Better Place, of course.
Other questions? We have 5 minutes. I guess we can. Shall we pay for questions with some CO credit? Well, I've heard, Liviu, that you talked about smart grids, and I've heard that
smart grids need smart customers, so we are waiting for questions.
But I've heard that the EC has, NL has now an EC-sponsored project on smart grids. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yes, we have presented a proposal, it was 6 months ago, probably you read it in the newspaper, for a project for the implementation of smart grids on the customer side. And we have been awarded this project by the Energy Commission, the European Community, for 10 million euros, 50% financed by the consortium and 50% financed by the European Community, for achieving a specification and methodology for the smart grids on the customer side in order to exploit the opportunities of sending this real-time price and energy volume signals to the customers, to the residential customers, in order to have them participated into the energy market. We have 22 members, European members, including industries, including utilities, including research centers and universities. So it will take 18 months, now 13 months ahead, in order to present the final work. We are confident, we are very pleased to have this opportunity to work in this area. So it was an important, I think, European achievement, we say. Thank you.
And last opportunity, yes? We have a question here. Mike?
I'll speak loudly, if that's okay.
It will run to you.
All of you have mentioned the need to engage with your customers and the importance of spreading the message to them. Is there any indication that the customers are actually coming to you now and making demands upon you and saying, we want to do more of this, or we want to see innovation in certain areas? Is there any indication of customer-driven innovation arriving?
Maybe we can...
Yeah, maybe I'll start answering it as yes, they are. Residential customers are. They're getting more and more involved in things like heat pumps, but also ability to measure what they're actually doing right now, number one. Number two, as I mentioned, since they are connected in our model with the internet, they start developing own things. From young people, school projects, all the way to people who just have time, spend time on certain issues and have ideas about it. Yes, it's very, it's there. The sustainability issue is in the public, and therefore they drive that and make it for us easier to sell those things, but also drive innovation. And that's the reason we keep it open, keep it to an internet world, because then those things can appear. And we don't know where what is appearing. It will, and sometimes they send the solution to us and say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Yeah, it's coming up.
Our customers at BT are screaming for it. At the consumer level in the UK, They want to know what is the power draw when the video box is on standby. They ask those questions in our shops. At business level, the UK is hosting 2012 Olympics. The environmental conditions around all of the contractual commitments, telecoms and other, that are environmentally sensitive are strong. And on a global basis, and many of BT's customers are global, they ask us what are our policies. We have in contracts, they'll say, what is your company's carbon policy? And we have one, I was able to explain it. And how does that affect your travel policy for your employees? Now that's a challenge. How actually do you link it? And more of our contracts